This is the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. I'm Michael.
And I'm Matt. In this podcast, we're going to discuss growing companies, automation and manufacturing,
and how we're building the lives and businesses we want to see in the world. How's your week been?
It's been good. I've been on the road a good amount. I've gone from one side of the state to the other. How about yourself?
Good. Yeah, we had a local event. It was like the Haas Automation Anaheim event that we got set up for, which those are always a little bit of a nightmare. You never know what you're going to come to, and
It's shows or events. There's always a chance of something not going as planned.
yeah. Those little 2-day events are difficult for sure.
What are some of the biggest challenges for you for those little events?
Well, the little events, we always try to get onto a machine, right? So they're usually going to be like a showroom, and it'll almost always be some kind of machine OEM dealer. And the issue usually is that they'll say the machine is ready. We'll go through the checklist, and the machine is never ready. So the nice thing though, now that we've built the whole little demo robot, is that we can, instead of having to come in a whole day prior and cross our fingers, and even then it might be impossible. Now we just come in, 3-4 hours with all the other vendors, and if the machine isn't set up the way that we were told it was, we shrug our shoulders, move on, and it's fine.
That's probably the best attitude about it is, you show up with two options, and if the premium option doesn't work, you've got a backup.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the little robot's nice. We ran into another issue with we noticed like all the machines weren't running, right? So they have like, I don't know, 6 or 7 machines, and we pulled up, I saw this, little, I don't know, 25, 30 gallon air compressor outside, and I was like, uh-oh. and I noticed, all the machines weren't running simultaneously, but we hit this like little, road bump where we would see like the part would occasionally fumble picking up out of the second vise in the little robot demo when the Mitaco demo was running, and the other robot demo was running, and the lathe was running. Like if they all perfectly happened at the same time, then we could run into that little hiccup.
Yeah.
So now we're getting a little pig tank. So we have our own little reserve air supply, which we'll clear that up on the next one.
Those little California air compressors work incredibly well too. I mean, we have, I think it's like one of their 5 horsepower ones that just has 2 wheels on the back of it. We ran that thing a lot, like for miscellaneous events, or like if you had to run something in the shop that you wanted to isolate. It worked pretty good.
Oh yeah, I actually have one, but it's at the hangar. It used to be the little mini demo air compressor, but yeah, dragging that thing along is probably a pretty good move.
Yeah. All right. What else happened this week?
I mean, for me, I've mostly just been focused on our next rev of the conveyor. I mean, we've been working on the manual, on the HMI design.
Yeah. I saw your manual or a post you put on Instagram. I really like how the aesthetics are. Are you doing all that in-house?
Oh yeah. That's like a really old like business plan that got I reskinned, newest logo.
Okay. Yeah, it just looked like a nice structure, good images in it, good text, good headers for structuring it through the menu.
Yeah, just SolidWorks screenshots. You set your background to white, and then you copy paste it. You don't have to mess with the background at all, and it can go pretty quick.
Oh yeah. All right. Yeah, I just liked how it was coming out. Nicely done.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we kind of alternate between like the text manuals and the PowerPoint manuals. And I'm still a little conflicted because the PowerPoint manuals, it seems like the customers more easily digest, but at the same time, the text manuals, they feel a lot more professional, and I can get a lot more of the actual detail. But then of course, if the customers don't actually read them, that's kind of the issue there.
Yeah, we've defaulted to just going straight text manuals, but it's not uncommon for our manuals to be 40 pages for a small machine to well into the hundreds of pages for a complex machine. So you need a table of contents and a way to search through that thing, or nobody's ever going to use it.
Yeah, I mean, we're like 20 pages already, and that manual's maybe 20% of the way done.
Yeah. It's amazing how big they can get.
Yeah, and you got to think about every little thing that the customer might do that they
sometimes
should do.
Yeah, sometimes you wait for the calls too, and then you just update the manual based on those. You don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been guilty of that strategy too much, and now we're trying to clean it up.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
And that's one thing on like a spindle gripper where like it's relatively self-explanatory on like how to run everything, but then the conveyor.
You think it is?
Well, yeah, but we think it's self-explanatory, yes, but like it's a lot of our products are simple enough. You should be able to figure them out. The conveyor, with its own PLC and multiple different motors and the tie, like it's not in the same ballpark. The documentation just has to be at a different level.
Do you think you make a video then on that too? Like when you're actually setting it up at a customer's facility, you'll just video record the entire process so somebody can watch a not cleanly edited, just 20-minute video or 2-hour video, whatever it takes.
Yeah, I think that's the plan. The I mean, right now, like where we are is the we had the Rev 3 conveyor, which was
Hmm.
pneumatic. And, I think I told you last time, like the big issue was that we'd have, customers like, adjust the pneumatics on their own or try to speed it up or people wouldn't bolt it to the floor and it would start to walk. One of the benefits was that it was low cost and customers could self-install it. But one of the downsides was that customers could self-install it and deviate from the instructions.
Yeah.
So, that kind of is what it is. But the newest version, we're just making sure those, with a level of lockouts and servo control that, we can kind of guarantee customer success so they can't tweak the knobs.
It's a good call.
Yeah.
Save
Yep.
you some tech support calls for sure.
So yeah, we're finishing up the Rev 4, and then we're trying to we got probably 3 or 4 customers, and yeah, I'm sure 1 or 2 of them will pull the trigger to be our kind of first beta users where we, sell it the whole package and like 25% off or something.
Yeah, that's always a good way. They're going to take some of the lumps, so they should get a gain to it.
Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean
Well,
the conveyors too. We like pretty much have a refund policy because like once people have it on their floor and see it, like how easy it is to use, you really don't want to go back to manual loading, and at least in my experience.
what's the refund policy then? What do you mean by that?
Well, when we beta test anything, basically we have a policy that's essentially like, okay, we'll give you your money back if you're not satisfied with it.
Okay.
And that comes with some caveats, like we still need the communication of like what went wrong.
Oh yeah, you got to learn.
Yeah, and it's never happened on like a large transaction value yet, but it's happened on like the beta tests of like the tumble baskets, for instance.
Interesting.
But I mean, part of that is there's like enough interest on the conveyors that I know even if one of the beta tests the customer says, I don't actually need this, then we can just turn it around and give it to the next guy.
Oh yeah, I believe that. It seems like a solid solution for a lot of people. Like you said, just feeding parts in manually obviously is going away, but you only have so much table space to utilize your traditional method. So being able to convey a larger amount of data is probably the real gain, or is it chip management is a better gain, or table space utilization?
Hey, can you come a
lot of
little
those
closer
two.
to your mic, Matt?
Oh, got it. Sorry.
Okay.
Is that better?
That's so much better.
I was just trying to figure out like the real gain on the conveyor. So there's kind of three folds that I see is you're getting more table space because you're not having to put the waffle trays in anymore, right? Or I don't know what you're
So
calling them.
it's mostly for fifth axis where it's not even an
Hmm.
option, right?
Okay, yeah, it's out of the question. Okay.
Well, I think you had a list of 3 things, and I interrupted
Well,
you on the first
I
one.
thought you were saying don't worry about the other two.
No, I was curious what you
by
were saying.
saying that. No, that pretty much disregards the other two by saying that. So that's
Oh,
great.
gotcha. So yeah,
Yep.
that one, the version that we're going to have go into the machine for a 3-axis application, it's coming, but it'll be probably mid next year, late next year.
Okay. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that deployed in several machines.
Yeah.
Good deal. Yeah, this it seems like for both of us, it's a little bit of shows then this week. So we have Pack Expo obviously coming up. So the team's working on buttoning up that show demo we have, which isn't many tweaks from our traditional MRS kind of trade show robot that we take. But now it's giving out the honey, like we've said, and it's more or less just getting all the HMI laid out because it's revisions to that need to be completed.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good to hear. You got your honey
Yeah.
distribution.
Yeah, it should turn out pretty good. Yeah, the guys are having fun with it. They're using 3D printed plastic honey jars because they're afraid they're gonna make a honey mess all over the place. 'Cause,
Oh.
a few of those have been crushed, I guess, in the process of testing.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, probably for the best, not having glass and honey everywhere. But
Yep.
and then otherwise, it's been lots of on the road this week. So I was on Milwaukee side of the state for a sales call, evaluating some really cool machines over there. That was fun because we actually did something unique that we haven't done for a sales proposal in the past. Is we actually took four of us to the site. So one team member that would be developing the HMI for that, one team member that would be handling the electrical, one person that would be handling the mechanical, and really just kind of did a focus group with that company because it'd be the biggest machine we've ever quoted to date. And so we just wanted to mitigate more of the risk, have more of the team understanding what we were getting into. So we're doing more of a proposal than we traditionally do, but I think it's very critical to mitigate the amount of scope associated with this one.
Oh yeah. That's those are always the projects that you win big, or are disappointed you didn't win them at all. But
Yeah, exactly. Well, sometimes not winning them is better if you don't have it
yeah,
bid correctly. Is the big thing on this
of
one for
course,
us
yeah.
because, it's just a monster. It'd be setting the pace for our 2020 end of 25 and all of 26. So, be fun.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Otherwise, just site visits as well with customers. I always like getting into our existing customers too to walk their floors and evaluate the stuff that we're building for them. Asking other technical questions. So lots of time on other people's facilities today, or in other people's facilities this week.
Cool. Can you pull the mic even
Yeah.
closer?
You still struggling to hear
I'm
me?
still,
Okay.
or you can just talk louder. You touched the red thing, the little capacitive button on accident. You want to have it probably like 6 to 12 inches from your face. I say something? Still red.
There we go.
There we go.
All right.
That's the
So you want it
best
that?
it's been.
Okay, so you want it like really close then. All right.
Yeah, mine is like that far away from my face.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, once I get that stand, it'll be a lot easier to do that next week. I suppose I could shove it in one of these cups of water here.
Yeah.
But okay, so you can hear me better now.
This is the best it's been.
Okay, is it good though?
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay, perfect.
This is the
All right.
first time your audio's been really good. I wouldn't lie to you
All
about that. Yeah.
All right, perfect.
So customer site visits, that's been most of your week?
That has been all of Monday and Tuesday, and then it's been buttoning up notes and shop stuff for the last couple of days. I was actually on the road again this morning for a chamber event, so we're still involved with a Wisconsin Manufacturing Chamber Committee in the state of Wisconsin, which has always been just a really good group to be around. There are a lot of good manufacturers in the area, so learning from them and seeing what they're doing or chatting about what they're up to is fun as well.
Yeah. Those little groups are always great. I mean, we're in NTMA. I really like the bigger events. I mean, sometimes the smaller events can be like, nothing but, like accountants and IT people who service the industry, which can be annoying. But yeah,
this
I really
one's
love big events.
Yeah, this one's more so I'm part of the small business committee that's specific within there. So that group's like 100 and some of us. So that breakfast was a good amount of people. And then they have a whole larger group that they service that's probably well into the thousands. So they're having a bigger event that I didn't attend later today, but they fill up more larger, it's called the Monona Terrace by us, event centers. So they had that whole place booked out.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else is happening in the shop for you this week?
Well, we had that event that was a little bit hectic.
Okay.
Some turnkey proposals, I guess, kind of the standard, bread and butter 2-op automation pallet stuff. We're pushing a little bit more to, we have I think 2 revs of our little. I don't know if you've seen it, the like 4th axis, it's a 4th axis air vise that has a integrated part flipper inside of it. And
Okay. Yeah.
it's still like mid patent stage, so we haven't gone and publicly put it on Instagram or our website or anything. That's gone into enough projects and is going into a couple more proposals now that I think are really it's worthwhile to go and give it the 3rd rev, get it to be a finalized product and not just something we throw at turnkeys.
Okay. Are you doing all utility patents on these, or are they designs?
Oh yeah, they're all utility patents.
Okay.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, I don't really care if we, get a design patent or not. Like I want to protect what the thing actually does, right?
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't sure. So, you can slap design patent on a lot of stuff very cost effectively, which deters a lot of the market. But anybody that knows anything about IP or patents can quickly dig into that and realize what you're doing.
Yeah, and at least right now my strategy is kind of like with IP in general. Really a like shotgun strategy of we're going to go and put out a fairly decent number of provisionals. Some amount we'll try to convert. Some amount probably won't even go through. And
Oh, yeah.
really, in my opinion, like our business isn't even big enough where it justifies like copying it and trying to take the marketing budget and but it's trying to be you kind of look ahead and see, okay, when we are, crossing the $10 million threshold, this is the thing we'll have wanted to put in place 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah, it'll be that value, that sticking value. But I guess that kind of goes back to what your exit strategy is too. If your goal is to always stay in the game, or if you're trying to sell it, that those have different values.
Oh well, I think that we're both kind of the, at least right now, in the mindset of staying in the game. I mean,
Yeah,
even the idea of like retiring to me seems a little bit foreign. I don't know about you.
no, same here. I don't know what I mean, this is retirement for me. I love what I do. I still get excited when the team's excited about solving some engineering problems. I kind of live vicariously now through their engineering, but yeah, I love coming into work. It's so much fun. I couldn't imagine, I don't know, sitting on the couch all day and staring out the window
Yeah.
as the alternative, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't know if I wouldn't call it retirement yet for sure. I definitely have the thing of like I don't know if you have this as well. Like when you feel like things are a little too comfortable or running, you'll push in
oh
ways that
yeah.
aren't always productive.
Yeah, I think we've had this chat
Yeah,
at one point too. I think it was when we both kind of finished that Dan Martell book where
yeah,
I forget what he calls that, but we both kind of self-sabotage ourselves in that fashion that like if things are feeling too good or too comfortable, it's like, yeah, there's got to be something wrong, or I've got to change something, or I've got to push. Yeah, I feel you there a lot.
yeah. And I like the idea of that book, and it was very eloquently put. But at the same time, I think back on that, I'm like, well, yeah, that's kind of like what drove us to be business owners in the first place, right? Of like, if we weren't the kind of people who said, well, this isn't good enough and we're going to push, then, we wouldn't have been in the position where we, did the crazy thing and started a company with no customers and no revenue and just an idea.
Oh yeah. I mean, if I would have overthought a lot of things in my life, I definitely wouldn't have done them or
Yeah.
given them. If I would have thought more than another minute, I probably wouldn't have done them.
Yeah. It's almost like to me, like it looking back, like it's a series of like stupid decisions and like obstinate stubbornness that eventually leads to you to being a successful entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think your stubbornness is a good way. I feel like discipline is the one that just always stands out to me. Like it's sometimes you just have to do the same thing over and over for a period of time, and that's really kind of what I've seen is just consistency, always being here because I mean the team needs us every day. The your customers need you every day, and sometimes that can be difficult.
Yeah. I mean, especially for the personality, I think, who starts the business, right? That kind of gets into the whole, visionary integrator role thing.
Hmm.
Of that, you need that early person who will go in and make, what candidly seem like stupid decisions from the outside because they have, some kind of inner belief in where that
Oh
things are
yeah.
going. But then you get to a point where you need lots of systems and things around you and candidly employees around you because usually at least for me the I could not do most of my employees jobs on a consistent basis. Just even the idea of doing something kind of vaguely similar a week from now from what I'm doing today would drive me insane.
Okay. Yeah.
I think you have a little bit of that but not as bad.
Yeah. I think it's our roles are just always being redefined as we
Yeah.
grow. And I think we have a couple paths that we can go down as business owners at our current size. So you have the option. Do you want to stay kind of in the engineering role, hire your operations or your CEO? Do you want to go in the marketing? Do you want to take that CEO role? I mean, we're kind of at that point where those decisions are getting made or how we want to scale that. And it really comes down to the personality. But yeah, as of now, we get to bounce around between all three of those.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and probably the next couple of years is where those decisions probably get made and felt out.
yeah,
Where's your head at? Are do you want to kind of push into the marketing role or marketing slash business?
yeah, that's I always like well, started in engineering. That's my background. I heard a lot, the line of recovering engineer. I still love engineering, but I gotta say, I'm probably not the best engineer. I'm going to be very open and admit that we've hired some engineers that are definitely better than I ever was. So I think that's obviously a clear path for me to step out of. I enjoy the marketing and business development. I like working with our customers on that standpoint. But at the end of the day, I've seen so much value in the operations too by stepping into some different roles on the operations side and helping the team, not as hands on as maybe I had been in the past, but I've also seen big value to the company and our growth there too. So I think I'm still defining that. I think I'm for sure going to be out of the engineering for at least the day to day, and then it'll probably be business development and a form of operations at that level will be my next transition, but we shall see.
Yeah, you never really know.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the team members you hire determine where they're best suited, and sometimes that pushes you around because you can be a little bit more nimble or you understand those sides. So you're better off to put a team member that can excel in an area that maybe you didn't plan on, and you just take on the other one. I don't know. That's kind of what I've been
Yeah,
seeing.
I mean that sounds more of a short term kind of plan, right? Like I think that we act like that a lot as people in this kind of small business mindset of, man, if I can find a really good person who does a thing, then I can just kind of hand that all to them. But I think probably long
Yeah,
term that you're kind of avoiding the question, if you see what I'm saying.
yeah. I'm saying organically growing people
Yeah.
within your organization is really what I'm saying. Like, you know, I guess you don't know. We end up hiring a lot of junior level engineers. There's a couple reasons for that, but at the end of the day, when you do that, sometimes they don't know exactly where their
Right.
career path is going to go, and sometimes you don't either because you're just figuring out what kind of person they are. And so sometimes, I mean, what I'm seeing is we've hired a good amount of engineers over the last couple of years, and they all have great personalities. Some of them are just having different career paths, and that's because of what they want. And so ideally, I'd love to bring somebody up within the existing organization, but time's going to have to tell that as we grow. And I understand that is avoiding the question, but ideally I'd
Yeah.
love to have more of the management and the operations come organically internally is what I'd love
I
to
guess
see.
where I'm pushing back is that I was asking about you personally. I totally am in the same page of like, we also love to hire kind of, I haven't done this so much in the last year, but historically I have, hire kind of junior level people, figure out where they're going to slot in. But I guess more of where I was pushing back was, I've seen myself do the same thing of like, I see, person X, Y, Z is really good, here or here or here, and then
Yeah,
I will slot myself somewhere else, not because like that's what I'm best at or what I'm most passionate about, because that's what the business needs right now. And I
I
guess
see what you're
what I'm
saying. Yeah,
talking about is like more when we scale the business to the point where we're not, we're almost hiring for a role rather than I think what we're doing now is hiring good or great people and growing them and figuring out where they go, and then everyone else kind of goes where they need.
I see what you're saying there. Yeah, then I mean, to answer your question, I think I still am struggling myself to answer that one completely because I love the marketing so much and the business development. The sales has been my staple role. Interesting enough, that's been the job description that's been getting written out right now. We just hired the one guy in
Hmm.
California as a contract level, and it's reaching the point where I was doing some auditing of my time over the last 12 months, and I track whether I go into sales, accounting, marketing. It's rather amazing. I mean, I'm going to have over 1,000 hours just towards sales last year. And I'm sure that that's actually a low number based on looking at my notes and what I was seeing. So that might actually be closer to like 1,200 to 1,500 hours, which tells me that I could potentially be holding our business back by trying to handle so many of these sales. So that's kind of one of those where it's like, well, I love doing that. All right, how do I get to only handling certain business development sales and get somebody in here to start taking care of, maybe the specific projects, let's say, or ones that are more cookie cut that aren't the high risk ones for us. So that's kind of one of those things, but then still haven't answered your
Mhm.
question. If I step out of the sales, then, which is where I thought I'd spend more of my time if I looked back, then it really comes down to really being the face of the business, if you will, kind of doing more stuff like this and taking that CEO role and team development operations is kind of where I see myself, because get a lot of energy going and talking to our team, seeing what they're doing, making sure they have what they need to do their job. I get a lot of energy out of that. Like when someone's like, "Oh, I need this," it's like, "Oh, we can solve that problem really easy." And it's, making sure that they're just jazzed up to be here every day and driving the right direction. I think that's probably where I'm going to be. So working high level with team on the CEO level and working on some business development marketing.
So I think you have the
That
answer.
answer. Yeah,
But yeah,
that's probably it.
I definitely feel that it can feel so distant to talk about something like that when you have so many steps in between, where
Yeah.
you are and where you want to be.
I also struggle with the CEO title in general. I guess I've always gone with president, but the org chart has been one of those I've always hated for some reasons. But as you start doing more project management at our level, you start understanding why you have senior level one engineer for X, just so you can start slotting those roles and tasks that are coming on these larger projects that we're going after. You really start to see that.
Yeah, because you just can't afford to manage the project you're on your own anymore when you have enough of them.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm saying from the role level aspect, it's you have different roles, because whether you're doing a complex, I'll use the project that we're evaluating, say you're doing some webbing for feeding some materials, that's going to be a different engineer than the person that's selecting the bolts and the
Yeah.
frame that goes to it all. But yeah, I don't know if that does that
No,
help
yeah,
you?
yeah. That I got the answer that I was, and it was kind of what
All
I
right.
thought it was. I think you're really passionate about the marketing and running and growing the business. And I think you're probably right on the sales front of, you know, I don't know that you're like necessarily holding your business back right now, but that's one of those things that's always impossible to tell because you kind of can't run, an A/B test until you do, right? And of course, there's a lot
Yeah,
of risk in actually doing the test.
I don't think our team could have handled any more sales in the last year. So that's probably not. I guess what I'm saying is I could potentially be holding us back in the future if I continue to try and handle all of that, which just isn't good for the future.
Yeah, too. I definitely think it's important to not look at it in a vacuum too, right? Because it's how many of the CEO things and the marketing things that you eventually want to be doing kind of all the time are you not able to do now because you're spending 1,200, 1,500 hours a year working on sales calls on projects that may not be something that you should personally be involved with.
Exactly. Especially now that we've started getting the processes around it. I mean, it's getting to the point where the our HMI developer, he's created templates for filling out for proposals of how they want their HMIs to look. I mean, the amount of detail our SOWs have gone to versus like the 4-page SOWs that we used to write for $500,000 projects. It's really cool to see the risk mitigation we've done, because we're very clearly stating this is what you get and this is what you don't get based on what you check.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, yeah. What about yourself? Where do you want to be? I think I have an idea, but
Yeah. I mean, I want to be, essentially. Like I think in the ideal world, I'm almost the CTO kind of visionary guy. I think I still keep myself at the top of the org chart, but I don't really want to be like running the businessy business. I more want to say, hey, this is the level I want to grow to. This is the people I want to hire. These are the things I want to achieve. And I think I'm really good at setting steering the metaphorical ship. But when it comes to organizing exactly what every person is doing or running Gantt charts, I'm pretty hit or miss, right? And luckily, because of that, I've hired people who are pretty self sufficient. And I think I mentioned a couple of episodes ago that we have historically been paying considerably over, kind of industry averages. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of that is coming from I have to hire people who are self-sufficient because honestly, I'm an okay to good manager. I'm never going to be a great manager. I think I know that. And really the question is,
It's good that you've identified that.
yeah,
That's congrats on that.
yeah. Congrats on not being, awesome at your current job title.
Well,
But
no,
yeah,
you're putting your ego aside and you're knowing what you're good at. So that's honestly, I think that actually is a sign of a good manager. So you might be better than you think.
Yeah. It's not even that I think I'm bad at it. It's that I lack, the same consistency and kind of passion that I have in other areas of my role and even in my life generally. Like I'm really really good at setting a vision of what product I want to build or a problem that I want to solve, and
Yeah.
kind of making an overall course and a plan. But when it comes to the division of labor of a Gantt chart, the I have definitely higher skill employees than most companies, especially of our size, would have, because I'm not as effective at managing and lower level staff and creating detailed SOPs, right? And
Yeah.
I think as the company grows, that becomes more important. Um, but it kind of is what it is right now, right?
Yeah. I mean, your team should, if you build an organic culture around that, I mean, something we've started doing is CI lists, continuous improvements,
Yep.
and then we can only have so many active CIs going at a time. And then we just assign budgets to them, assign team members, and we just chug down the list. And some of those are SOPs. Sometimes those are manual, so you get less tech support
Hmm.
calls. But I mean,
Yep.
that's part of our weekly meeting is going through those and looking at what we're going to do. And then we also have what we call the 2x2s, where the team gets freedom to anything that they see as a CI that's under $200 or 2 of their hours or any team members' hours. They can just go ahead and do them and notify the team that they've done them in the next meeting and basically where to find those things. The key is
Yep.
to notify the team that you've done these
Hmm.
things, because in the past we've done a lot of continuous improvements or processes, documented them or the person that did them. And then it's like, oh, why aren't you using that continuous improvement thing or that document? It's like, I didn't know you made that, Matt, or I didn't
Right.
know you
Yep.
made that. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we've got a feedback loop problem here.
Hmm. Yeah, and I have to bear in mind too, like I can be way too hard on myself. I mean, the reality is like, there have been tons and tons of improvements, and we really only been doing the automation thing for like 18 months at what I consider a really professional high level. And I've transitioned a whole business from one business to the other, so I also have to kind of remember to go easy on myself of like, I have grown this new business, multiples faster than I grew the first business. And that, I don't know, we have 300 unique part numbers, and the it's been, a hard year getting everything really dialed in.
Yeah, and it seems like that's your goal for next year is, well, you've been dialing things in. It's really now perfecting that process and honing further for the next 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what it is. And what I've kind of seen is that it's taken like probably 4 revs to get anything to like perfect. Like, our 2-op automation palette, like, we went through the first rev, it sucked, that never made it out the door. The second rev, that went to like literally one customer, then we made a third rev that went to literally one customer, and then we made a fourth rev, and then we replaced the first two. And then, that has become probably our bread and butter, and it's like the real final polish project or product where, and the same on the kind of software back end, that's gone through 3 different revs to get really good. And I guess speaking of 4 revs, that's our like magic number. We're on rev 4 of a conveyor now, and I think this will be the first one that's truly like great and kind of perfectly reliable. So yeah, I think we've done that already on like a lot of our smaller products, and now it's doing it on the bigger and bigger ones.
Yeah, that's an interesting challenge with engineering too, because nobody, I should say nobody, that's wrong there, but it's really hard to explain the aspect of revisions or going through those iteration process, because we'll see that on machine builds where it's like we think something's going to go a certain way, and then that timeline it turns into rev 2, 3, 4, and then the customer's like, well, we thought we'd be here XYZ, and it's like, your product's not behaving as anticipated. So we're going through these revisions. Yeah, we're still maintaining timeline, but just because we said we were in the build and testing doesn't mean you're getting your machine in a week. And so what we've really started to see, and something we're discussing as a team, is how we're going to be changing timelines of build. Is how do we get the thing designed and built as fast as possible for Rev 1, which has always been the goal,
Right.
but give the testing and debugging basically half the Gantt if possible. So say it's a 12-month build, how do we give 6 months of that to test and debug and have that be our buffer as well?
Yeah, and
It's
it's
been
hard
kind of a
too.
fun
Like
one.
the smaller the thing is, the more likely we are to just throw it out and build a new one.
Oh
And
yeah.
you get into these projects that might be 20, 30, 40, 50, $100,000. And then there's this tension that gets created between, do we make a whole new rev or do we make a rev 4.1?
Yeah,
And
no, we see that too,
yeah.
that sunk cost fallacy of the dollars there for
hmm
sure.
And I can't tell you how many times we've done a dot one, a dot two, a dot three. And guess what? We should have made a whole new one. And we burnt lots and lots of labor hours trying to do it.
Yeah, and that's the key right there. You're nailing it. Is the we're trying to save the say $20,000 or $10,000 in parts, but then we lose all that in labor, and we end up with a subpar solution, or we end up redoing it anyways. Is what you're saying, and it's like, yeah, sometimes this, I wish I would have bit the bullet sooner on this pain.
Yeah,
You
and,
know,
and that's a pain, I've been going through for, literally 3 years and just never biting the bullet and just buying a proper ladder-based industrial PLC. And now that we've made that change, I'm like, wait, really? The relay modules just have like 24 volts built in, and like, you just like turn it on and off. You don't have to like take the one DIN rail mounted component and then take like it just clicks together. And I'm just
oh
looking
yeah.
at this. I'm like, how much money have I wasted, paying six-figure engineers to put together these components because I didn't want to pay an extra $50 for the relay module. Yeah,
No, that's a tough one. And then, I mean, you start getting into the robot aspects, and you'll get IO right there, and you'll be like,
hmm
oh, I don't even need a PLC in some situations here.
yeah. That's. But then at the other end of the spectrum, it's if you look at it from a unit economic point of view, you can only get so cost effective when your starting game is $3,000 on the frame and $3,000 on the PLC and so on and so forth.
And that sounded like it was your main driver of that was, all right, I'm trying to
Oh, that
save
was
it
always my
if we
main driver
sell.
in my head, but it was never the right call. Now that I have kind of seen, I mean, the big thing I've seen, honestly, with our like conveyor system is that you know, at a higher price point now, we're having an easier time selling it because it's just people just trust that it's more industrial, it's more in line with what competitors are charging for similar-ish things. We're still probably half the cost, but we're not a quarter of the cost. Um,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like that's a common challenge that a lot of people have, is looking at the cost of components versus the labor aspect. I mean, I've seen that with a lot of engineers I've worked with in pretty much every spot I've ever
mhm.
worked. And it's just an interesting economics problem within engineering. And I don't think you're anything new there by going through that problem.
Yeah, and I think, fundamentally we're both really familiar with it because, at the end of the day, we're really both engineering firms. Like, yeah, we make parts and machines but, we're trying to engineer some sort of outcome. And we both sell some amount of, kind of mid-tier industrial level products, as well as, bespoke engineering. And that's definitely the continual challenge of, there's a million ways to do something. Do you buy the drop-in
Oh yeah.
component? Do you engineer it from scratch? And finding the sweet spot and finding product market fit and continuing to stay disciplined and focused while still expanding, right? That's the hard bit.
Yeah.
And I think, at least for me, where I can get a little bit dangerous in making not the best decisions is when it comes to my vision of the next thing.
Yeah. And I think your comments on the labor, though, is when you're picking parts, just have some labor efficiency calculation there that the team has to go through. Or like, it's all right, what are my risks if I buy this $50 part versus this $250 part? Am
Yep.
I guaranteed to get straight to the solution if I just spend the extra money? Great, I have no risk, you know.
Yeah, and you say that, and like, I feel myself like, I talked about where I'm kind of a weak manager, like shriveling up inside, of like, you do the labor efficiency calculation. I'm just like putting my hands in my head because like that's the exact thing. Like when it comes to financing or finances, invoice, like financial optimization, labor allocations in terms of bean counting, accounting, efficiency. That's really probably our organization's biggest hole that I need to fill.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have some tools I could help you with there that I've used. A lot of it's come down to just general forecasting, documentation. So creating big buckets from your P&L and from your balance sheet, and then just tracking where your money is going, and then getting a percent baseline on that. So you get an idea. All right, does 10% in this bucket make sense? And then I mean, you can Google terms, see what other people in industry are doing to see, all right, am I out of line here? Where should my labor ratio be? I'm sure that's your biggest expenditure still. And what's the percentage of that of all your expenses for 25? And then you can start seeing how that trends with growth and your efficiencies.
Oh yeah,
I
and
nerd out. I nerd out
yeah.
about the numbers and seeing how tweaking certain things tunes that.
Yeah, and it's not that I can't do it, or even that I can't be decent at it. It's just that I have the feeling when it comes to things like especially getting into bean counting or financial engineering or efficiency as a percentage of cost. I'm almost like a 4'6" person trying to play in the NBA. Like, yeah, I can potentially hit a basket and I can set every, but it's just not one of my strengths. And
Yeah,
I
and
think, yeah, it's one of those things I hate enough that I know, sooner or later I just need to find someone who's really great and put them in that slot.
well, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's if you have three things on your calendar, which one are you going to do first? It's kind of that question. If that's the task that's last, it's obviously one
Yeah.
you should be hiring.
And I also, have become a lot more aware that I've like, blinded myself with my passion for CNC machines and engineering. And I think, in a lot of ways, as a business owner, you're actually really blessed by the fact that you don't have that, that driving passion of like, if I could just, staying up at night, if I just did this or this, with a spindle gripper, or a robot system, because I think honestly that makes you a better business owner. And as I grow in my own business journey, I think I got to find that person that kind of complements that other side.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, I still get stuck up at night thinking of products, but since we've narrowed in our budget so
Yeah.
much, that's definitely not where my mind is constantly thinking. So yeah, I gotta say, yeah, my energy doesn't gravitate there as much as it might have in the past.
Yeah, and I've
So I
forced
appreciate that.
myself to be really disciplined about working on additional revs of current products that already exist. But it's still hard for me, and I still have these ideas that I want to pursue that I know like it's not the time yet. But speaking of
Okay.
ideas that I want to pursue that it's not time yet.
Okay.
I think I've talked to you a little bit. Have I talked to you about like the RZ Theta, like a Roa style robot thing that
Oh
I've had
yeah.
stuck in my
Yep.
head?
I think it's a great idea.
Well, it's a great idea, yeah, but I think that the new version of the conveyor loading system, we moved to the new PLC. It's relatively simple. We have two motors. The it's a relatively simple layout. And one thing I realized is, hey, it'd be a lot less of a jump to go from this Rev 4 of the conveyor to a instead of like an RZ Theta, just like a take out the Z dimension and just have an R Theta robot. So have you seen like the Matsura like 10 pallet pool? Um,
Yes.
I'm kind of rethinking my approach to like the RZ Theta robot as to like, well, we've had good success with, delivering $20,000, $30,000 solutions when the market's delivering one or $200,000 solutions. And the conveyor we're doing, a little bit on market of that, but we're delivering a $30 or $40,000 solution versus a $200,000 solution. And I'm kind of wondering with the pallet pool if if I've been kind of stupid to add that dimension because like I guess the thought process is if we just had 10 or 15 pallets and we just had a single layer, and 6 8 inch pallets, would that be enough? Because that's potentially a product that has a much shorter development cycle that we could sell, in that $30,000 $40,000 range, as opposed to a $100,000 product.
What weight can you pick with a spindle? Have you ever tested that?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
could you conveyor feed pallets in?
Yeah, and we've done it before.
Okay.
And we actually have a whole product that we put a provisional on, never actually released. That is like a reverse 0 point system. that, has like the
Oh,
balls that
yeah.
come in and then stretch out, and then you can move the pallets. And we made this little custom, like the Shunk or the Pearson, they have this little thing you screw in, but it goes into the top of the pallet instead of the bottom. And we did
Mhm.
that and we played with it. But the conveyor just doesn't make a ton of sense for that. Um, but yeah, we explored that idea of moving the pallet in with the spindle, but the clearances tend to become the issue because you're coming down from the top.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
But I guess the question is, like if you were able to have, let's say, a product that was 30 grand that gave you, pallet changing on 15 pallets, the is that an attractive product offering in general? Kind of and candidly, we're going after kind of the Haas through Doosan through Herco market. We're not going after, we're not going after Style, and we're not going after DMG Mori, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If you're asking me if that makes like financial sense, I don't know enough about your existing customers yet and exactly on that price point. I think what I would say based on everything I've heard is timing's going to be critical, and make sure you saturate the market with your conveyor and ask your customers that you're deploying that with, like, hey, we're talking about this, maybe not the day they're signing the
Of
check,
course,
like
yeah.
this is what we're thinking
Yep.
about doing next, this thing's outdated, but I don't know, maybe you just get 100 of those conveyors out there and then you get some focus group and start seeing. I mean, you have a huge opportunity there as you're deploying these products. I mean, you just going with some of these might be a huge value rather than asking me or somebody that doesn't necessarily know the ins and the outs. Go in and deploy 100 of these things, and you're going to see things within businesses, because that's
Of
our big
course,
thing
yeah.
that we've seen is automation assessments, and going in and looking at their full business side starts opening up different opportunities that they didn't even see. I mean, I can use an example. I flew out to Massachusetts to do an automation assessment. The project was looking like it was going to be 800,000 to $1 million. We left and we found them a $1.6 million opportunity. They spent 5 grand to fly me out there so we could
Right.
do an automation assessment. That's really our loss leader in the business to do the automation assessments. But we help them find more opportunity and more value in their business by doing it. And for you, it's how do you find more value and opportunity for the products you want to create?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm definitely on the same page, and that's why I think it takes a lot of discipline for me to work on additional revs and perfect the product, and I do it because I want to make our customers super happy, and I guess too that's part of the reason I said, hey, speaking of things that aren't ready, or I shouldn't even be working on, until Rev Four
Oh,
is really
okay.
perfected. And I
Yeah.
guess one thing you should kind of know about our business as well is that once something is good, for instance, our rotary bypass gripper, or the our standard gripper line, or I really don't touch it. So like I kind
Oh,
of
that's
go,
that's key.
yeah. And I guess that's kind of why I'm always thinking about the next thing. And right now I have to have the discipline of like, let's get the Rev 4 into 3 or 4 of these beta testing shops. Once we're 100% happy with how the one here is performing, and then from there, go and polish that out to where there's potentially no circumstance where it can misload or not detect a misload and so on. But then of course my brain is always 4 steps ahead, and this is I know it sounds pie in the sky, but this is actually me pulling back a step, because before in my head I was going to move from the conveyor to the RZ Theta robot.
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I'm just like, well, we actually have a pretty good market that wants to buy these $30 to $60,000 solutions. Let's build that market a solution when they need pallet changing and not part changing. And also, by the way, the same HMI and the same level of complexity and the same general structure that we've already put for revs of development in the conveyor, we can just transfer over, and it's not this whole kinematic different level HMI, different levels of layer checking, and issues that could arise.
And I guess knowing that that's what you inherently always want to move on to because that's what you're passionate about, where do you feel like, if you didn't do that, how could you also scale your business? So if you didn't go on to making a new product thinking, all right, we're going to generate this other value stream, how can you optimize the value out of, you said you made 250 SKUs in the last 12 months.
Well, that's like
There's
unique
got to be
part
a lot of
numbers. I think we
value.
have like 75 unique SKUs that we
I mean,
sell.
But there's got to be a pile of value there that you can mine that you're underutilizing. Is there opportunities that you think through marketing, sales, distribution, spending those human hours on something else could actually impact your business greater?
Oh yeah, and the automation, like, monthly, we're kind of floating mid to high five figures, and I definitely think that there's more than enough potential to cross into the six-figure range. I don't think it'll happen by the end of the year, at least the way we're doing it. The I guess kind of the question has been the at least for me, what has accelerated our growth, and this might be kind of a survivorship bias, has always been when I've done the additional revs and polished a product to where it's really great, right? Because we
Because you're excited about it.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
so easy to sell something you're new and excited about, and then you're moving on to the next. Yeah.
Well, that's where I guess that's one of the differentiators between our companies, because I don't really do sales unless it's an important client, or someone that I
Mhm.
have a pre-existing relationship with. That just all goes to our VP of sales, and he just does it. And then if he has any questions about, is this physically possible, are there any technical details, then maybe I get involved for 5 minutes.
Okay.
So I'm not really involved in the sales side, but it's almost like, once our products go from, being good at what they do, which is usually where they start, Rev 1, Rev 2, to being, an actual market leading solution, which is where they end up in Rev 3 or 4, is, usually when they become an easy product to sell, because they don't, all the little problems have been polished out.
Oh yeah, makes a lot of sense.
And
Do you,
there's also the thing of, speaking of what I'm good at, like, I'm good at talking about products. I'm good at being, very
oh yeah.
passionate. I'm very good at technically connecting to customers. I would say more so on the smaller side, right? Where I think I can
Hmm.
struggle a little bit more selling into the, $2 billion a year publicly traded company, because, we kind of have the culture of being a nimble, fast, like, want to get it done. And then, we'll sell those companies, and it takes, a month to get the PO and 2 months to get the payment. So,
I
I might not
I
connect.
understand that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I remember always, like, when we started off, I was enjoying the sales so much more with the small businesses and being able to do that. Now it's like if we get into projects where it's the terms are 60, 90, 120 plus days, it's like I have no problem like those sales cycles. But once you're in there, the relationships are just so strong,
Oh,
is
yeah.
what I've found. Where like I love the small business and the startup side because that's obviously where we're both at. But the volatility there has just been so insane, is what I've seen, and inconsistency from month to month. And that's, I think, some of the pains you've said with your contract engineering of what you've done in the past, where it's like,
Oh,
hey,
for
we
sure.
got to get all this done this month. And it's like your entire team's allocated to hitting their goal. And then the next month it's like, we got to stop because we can't pay
Hmm.
you. It's like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Like,
Yeah. I guess when I say smaller too, I mean like sub 50. Um,
yeah.
the for the most part, like, we've kind of learned the 1 to 5 guy shops. We'll talk to them for a little bit, and then we'll tell them, here's where the stuff is. And we kind of know that they really probably aren't going to be able to afford to do a turnkey, or jump to the thing that they want.
Yeah.
And the resources are there, and we tell them how much it costs, but it's pretty rare, even for the sub 5 person shops, to get to the proposal stage.
But do you put them into like an email drip campaign? Because you have HubSpot as well, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of, one of the other things that I can be kind of inconsistent about, is just marketing in general. And that's another place where when I do it really well, but then I can kind of, I put my foot on the pedal and then come off. And I think you've even seen that with just my level of consistency of editing the podcast.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like editing a podcast wouldn't be that much fun. So when you said you do it, I definitely was very much all for it. So thank you for that.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, no, I don't. You have so much going on, Michael. So I don't think you need to
Oh,
worry
yeah,
about
yeah, I need to pay
the
someone to do it.
podcast.
There's no
Yeah,
question
and
about that. That's one of those, like, easy, and shout out to Andrew from Henry Holsters, because we did a little sales presentation. He actually gave the manufacturing automation podcast a plug. But that was one thing that
oh,
he told
great.
me too, of like, you need to pay somebody to do your podcast editing. And I was like, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think we need to pay somebody because this is still a
Yeah.
50-50 play here. So you just let me know what it costs, Michael, and
Okay.
we'll get it
Yeah.
taken care of.
I'll let you know. We should get that kind of off of my plate.
I agree. It sounds like a good plan. I've also seen we've had some comments on Instagram that people are enjoying it. I figured like nobody was listening to this thing. I mean, we've just been doing it for a month, so it's really cool to see that. Have you gotten any feedback what people are enjoying about the podcast
Yeah,
or
I mean,
topics we should be covering or questions they have?
we've actually had multiple leads come to us and get quotes
Okay.
and
Wow.
specifically from the podcast. The
Okay.
I think the thing is that what's funny is Gary, our sales guy, kind of told me he's like, I don't really like the idea of the podcast. Like, you're not really marketing, and I'm like, no, 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 you don't understand. This is a repeated touch point that gets people in the door and listening. And the biggest thing is they understand who we are, what we stand for, and they trust us. Right? We're not trying to tell them about the product. If they're here, they probably already know about the product. We're trying to say, this is who we are as people, as companies, this, and be real about what we're struggling with. And then the people come and kind of automatically trust us. And,
Yeah.
I think like candidly, it's probably a better marketing tool for Gimbal than it is for Develop, because I think the
More than
people,
likely.
yeah, because I think the people who are listening are companies our size, right? Because that's where the content's really relatable. And, one of the big things, even if it wasn't a good marketing tool, I'd still want to do it because it's just a nice, see what you don't know, what you're doing wrong. Call with another, in the industry, that's a big thing, business owner at a similar-ish scale. But I think the big thing is that it builds that trust, and the I think it's easier for us to get real leads out of it than for you, because I think the businesses you're going after are usually probably 10 times our scale, right?
Yeah, I should be talking about our fixture systems that we make, the products that we solve our internal problems with, that then we turn into products.
Yeah.
That's the stuff I should probably be talking about the podcast is, the vacuum fixtures that we made just to change our workflow on CNC machining plates, the engineering it's everything's an acronym with the develop, but yeah, the engineering fixture systems that the embedded
So the whole
hardware team
industry.
wanted. Yes, because we kept tearing down all these fixtures for testing PCBs, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is just a polycarb plate we got to make with a bunch of holes and then 3D print all our fixturing, and then those test racks just live on the shelf, and it costs us way less in parts than time to rebuild,
Yeah.
like stuff like that. That's probably what I should be talking about.
No, I mean, honestly, I think it's one of those things that a lot of those companies will grow, people will move. And, honestly, you're going to get an order of magnitude fewer leads than us anyways, because you're charging,
Oh
an
yeah,
order of magnitude more.
well, that's a good question. How many leads are you trying to get next year? Do you have a back calculation on that?
Yeah, that's another thing of, when it comes to just by the numbers, whatever, I think what I'm really looking at, and I think honestly, this is not, an endorsement of me as a disciplined business person, but, really I'm just looking at top line revenue, percentage over month growth in our automation sector. And I think that's where I'm paying attention to. And like, look, I look at the website traffic, I look at, the ROAS occasionally of our paid advertising. I think I just care about really the overall sales volume rather than the number of leads.
But to drive that, you have to back calculate what you got to feed there. So
And now
how
you're
you
seeing, Matt, why
determining
I'm
your
not the greatest at creating a marketing funnel.
okay. No, that's
Yeah,
fine. I mean, that's another thing I just nerd out about on those
yeah,
numbers is the economics of that. And I would just be curious to learn what that number is, like how many touch points you need or how many leads you need or what it takes to convert a deal. So then if your goal is, all right, we want to be at 5 million by 2026 or whatever that number is, how many sales is that? So now I've got to make X number of sales because of our average cost or our average sale value is, and then turning that into, all right, what is our conversion rate? And then how many people do I need to talk to within that
yeah.
12-month period to hit that? Like that's a calculation that I would be curious to see how our two businesses compare. Because like for us, I'm trying to get 400 leads next year and that's it. Like,
Yeah.
and so I wouldn't be surprised if you're trying to get 4,000 leads.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely more than 400. I mean, we came across with 600 from IMTS.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah, that's
300 were good. Yeah.
well, I guess there's the other thing to break that down is the level or quality of it. So like we'll go to a trade show and we'll get say 250, 300 leads in scanning, but only 50 of them will typically be qualified as a lead for us. So something you might want to look at is what's called like the BANT,
Hmm.
analogy or acronym for sales. So it's like the buyers is the I actually have it wrote down here. I guess it. BANT is budget, authority, need, timing. So those things are what break down as a lead on the top of our funnel. So you can see, all right, yeah, this person's really interested in our product, but they don't
Hmm.
have the authority or the budget because they're just a two-person shop and they're making onesie twosies.
Yeah, and I think part of what this conversation is kind of reminding me is like, long term. Like I'm in the marketing kind of seat in our business, but probably shouldn't be there forever. I think it's okay for me to kind of be the face, but I definitely shouldn't be the one designing the funnel, or saying, to hit our growth targets, this is how many people we need at the top of the funnel, down a layer, down a layer.
Exactly. Yeah, that's if you're knowing that, then it's figuring out how to get your sales team to start thinking about it that way because you need to start forecasting what your lead value needs to be to hit your top line revenue value.
Hmm.
If those two aren't working together, you're going to probably
Yeah.
get frustrated at some point, or you're going to wonder why you're not hitting certain metrics or why you blew past them. And that's a good problem too. But why? What'd you do
Hmm.
that was so good?
It makes me think, Matt, if our businesses simultaneously ever implode, we have a very complementary skill set, and I think it's very
We should
unlikely to
come work.
happen.
Yeah, we should come work. Maybe we should just put our businesses right next door to each
Hmm.
other, and then I'll be like your fractional CEO, and you can be a fractional CTO for
Yeah.
me.
There's not a single more business friendly environment than Los Angeles. So clearly
Oh
you should move
yeah,
here.
I guess what's the weather there right now? Because it's 30 degrees here, and I could go for some warmer weather right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's 72, but it's cloudy
Oh
and
man.
I can't stand the clouds.
Oh yeah, poor
Yeah.
you.
Poor me. Yeah.
It's. I mean, it is sunny here, but you go outside, and I
Hmm.
can tell you that this long sleeve shirt isn't warm enough.
Yeah. I kind of have an
So
outfit. I wear like the same t-shirt, the same pair of shorts in varying colors, albeit the same pair of like Nike Air Force Ones that are like super beat up.
okay.
And I wear it every day, rain or shine.
Oh yeah, I've got a couple staple outfits. You got to get yourself a pair of Danner boots. I got to say that though. You don't have those for the shop. Support some American-made leather boots.
I got really into like Allen Edmonds for a while. I had like a dressy phase, when I just had
Okay,
way too
yeah.
much time during COVID, and
Mhm.
I got I was very briefly wearing suits, and then eventually I was like, what am I doing? Like I can't go out on
Yeah,
the shop floor. Like I'm a little worried about a can of WD-40.
yeah. I had to be in a suit earlier today for that event. It was kind of funny. The first time I ever went to the Wisconsin Manufacturing Committee, I showed up in like a polo, some
Oh,
shoot or jeans from the shop
yeah,
floor, and my beat up work boots. I was like, this is manufacturing committee. I mean, I'm gonna fit right in.
yeah,
I walk in, I was like, ooh, I
yeah.
am the black sheep in this room. I stand out very much. And so now it's like, yeah, I gotta wear the suit every time I go to one of those events.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Any other stuff on your mind this week?
nothing too crazy. What about the weekend? I think we've been rounding it up what we're kind of doing for fun on the weekend. Is there anything for you?
I know we're going to see my fiance's family. She has
Okay.
the big Asian family with, cousins and and they all kind of live near each other. So that's
Okay.
always an event.
Where do you have to go for that? You're in LA. Where do you have to go for the
they're
event?
they're in Irvine, so it's 45
Oh,
minutes an
okay.
hour. It's not terrible.
That
And
sounds
then
fun.
yeah, the rest of the weekend's kind of open.
Okay.
So I will see where it takes me. Sometimes I end up in the shop working on, designs or the pie in the sky projects that I can't justify putting
You
time on during working hours.
you
Um,
yelled at me for doing that last week.
oh, I know.
That's
the
good.
I am not gonna say I was wrong, but I definitely am never a hypocrite. Yeah, it's a tough balance, and I definitely kind of
It
struggle with
is.
being too passionate to the point that I can kind of burn myself out by working too much.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, that's the
No, I feel you. It's like I get home at night and it's like I just always got to do stuff. Or Amanda will be doing something at the end of her night, and I just have some free time. It's like, I'm gonna go take care of like an hour's worth of emails.
hmm
It's like, no, Matt, just go read a book or something.
yeah. Yeah, and there's always
So
that question of like, how much is me working more actually going to move the needle in my business?
it becomes less and less as your
Yeah,
business
yeah.
grows.
And
And
it becomes more
that's
about general direction and the big picture thinking.
well, it just level of engagement is what I've seen. Like, I feel like my capacity as I hit certain hours, if I'm like at that over 50 to 55, 60, once I get to that 60, it's like, all right, my engagement for the next week is down and I'm
Yeah.
not there for my team. And that's where I get like, all right, that's where I have to stop. So that's my mental hard stop at this point. But that's the way I justify it is I feel like I'm not there for my team at the performance level I need to be.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been, I think, one of my big focuses over the last like month and a half has been figuring out how to like, just generally smooth myself out as an employee, as a manager, to where, I'm showing up and, even if it means I'm not, doing some great, breakthrough thinking design, just,
Yeah.
having the consistency. And it's kind of always been one of my weaknesses, figuring out how to be super consistent, and importantly too, putting the processes in place so that I don't have as much on my shoulders.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But
So good
it's
luck
definitely a
with
work
your
in
weekend.
progress.
Yeah, good luck with your weekend. Hopefully you
Yep.
get some time for yourself.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I don't. I follow my own rules and actually, try to take some time off.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Sounds good to me.
Sweet. You want to wrap up there, Matt?
Sure, it works for me.
Cool. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to Matt and I's conversation this week on the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. If you like the podcast, please share it with a friend or give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll be back next week to continue sharing our respective journeys in life, business, and industrial automation. Thanks so much.